Welcome everyone. Whether you are with us on Zoom through Torah or watching our live stream on Facebook or a YouTube video, we're Mindel and David Cheslow, sheltering in place here in our home in Boca Raton, Florida. For many years, the study of Pirkei Avot has actually been going on for over 1,100 years, and it's been a big part of Shabbos afternoon throughout the Sefirah season, the weeks between Pesach and Shavuos. Because of the coronavirus situation, we're unable to meet in person, and we therefore have created this virtual-based medrash to share with you in our own home. We'll be offering this course every Sunday until Shavuos. We hope you'll find this effort worthwhile, and will join us for about a half hour every Sunday morning. Coffee is optional. Mindel and I dedicate this series of shiurim to the memory of Mindel's mother, Sophie Siegel, Shoshka Bat Ber Lev, who passed away the day after Shavuos in 1980, and to my father, Morris Cheslow, Moshe ben Reuven Mordechai, who was taken from us on the last day of Pesach 2006. May the Neshamos have an Aliyah. We have attended many different presentations of Pirkei Avot. Some teachers try to cover the entire chapter each week. Some leaders will skip around and choose a few that they find more relevant and interesting. Some will choose one or two Mishnayos and examine them in depth. Our own approach will be to cover about half of each chapter. We intend to give historical and biographical context to each week's program. Mindel will give the timeline setting, as well as brief life stories of all the traditional personalities, all the Talmudic personalities that we reference. And then I'll go through the text of the Mishnayos. For sources, we are using the Pirkei Avot of Rabbi Wine's Pirkei Avot. Also, we're using the Koren Pirkei Avot, which features the translation by Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs and also Rabbi Mark Angel. We also are using the Kahati, which is finished by Rabbi Pinchas Kahati in Israel in 1956. And what he does is he cites the Rashi, Bartanura, other classical commentaries, along with his own comments in modern Hebrew. For history, we're using a book called Sages of the Talmud. This is done by Mordechai Judowitz here actually in Boca Raton, Florida. Pirkei Avot can be found in most Sidurim right after the Shabbos Mincha. In the regular Art Scroll Siddur, it can be found on page 544. That's in the Art Scroll Hebrew English Siddur, page 544. You can find Pirkei Avot. One of the reasons suggested for learning Perek during the summer is to begin the tshuva process, as well as preparing us for the giving of the Torah. I think for this reason, each week we open to the learning quoting a Mishnah from Sanhedrin, and that Mishnah is as follows: Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chelik l'olam haba, shenemar v'amcha v'amech kulam tzadikim l'olam yushu eretz neitze mitoy maseh yadai lispoer. Basically saying that every Jew has a share in the world to come. And this is to give us encouragement that as long as we are sincere and maintain our faith, we'll be okay.
Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, is one of the best-known sections of the Mishnah and appears in Seder Nezikin, which are torts. Pirkei Avot may have originally appeared at the end of the Mishnah as a kind of summary of the essential ethical principles of the whole Mishnah. Perhaps Avot, which we translate as fathers, could instead be translated as categories, similar to the categories of work on Shabbos, which are called Avot Melacha. We meet the rabbis, whose legal opinions appear elsewhere in the Mishnah, and we get to know their view of Hashem, the Torah, man, and the greater world through their much-loved sayings. Pirkei Avot serves as a genealogical source as well. We see the rabbinic line of transmission of Torah knowledge, beginning with Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai, and then we jump to Yehoshua, the elders, and the prophets. David.
First Mishnah, Moshe kibel Torah misinai, v'masar Yehoshua, Yehoshua l'zikanim. So the Mishnah starts, Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. And what the Mishnah is saying here is Moshe received two Torahs. He didn't receive only the written Torah, he also received Torah Shebal Peh, the oral law, which really is the basis for the Talmud, basis for the Mishnah, which we'll be discussing. And very important, especially in the early Mishnayos, where we're going to get into the subject of the oral law versus the written law. So, and Moshe received the Torah. He then passed it along to his top student, Yoshua. Yoshua Zekanim. Yoshua passed it to the elders. Zekanim leNeviim. From the Zekanim it went to the prophets. Uneviim misaru la'anshe knesses hagadola. And the prophets, their transition was into the men of the great assembly. Heim amru shlosh dvarim. And they were known for saying three statements. Hevem misunim bedin. You should be deliberate in judgment. In other words, be careful. Gather all the facts. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't make a quick judgment. Be careful. Be deliberate. Hamidu Talmidim Harbe. Have many students. And we're going to be learning about various of the rabbis. Some of them, like Hillel, wanted to have many students. You had Shammai that limited them. You wanted to judge them by the character first. So the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah are telling us, have many students, because you don't know which one is going to turn out to be the great one. So make sure you have many, many students. Vasus Yagla Torah. Make a fence, make a boundary around the Torah. And there are interesting meanings for this. Some people say that it's a way to protect the Torah itself, that the rabbis have made many decrees so that we would not violate the Torah. And also, there's a situation that somebody who is giving over Torah should also have a boundary. In other words, don't speak too long. Keep it interesting. Don't speak too long, because there was a situation where a certain individual was giving a talk and he was apparently going too long, and the listeners, who were learned people, said, "Why are you taking such a long time?" So he said that, "I'm doing it to make sure that those who are not so knowledgeable will catch on." So they answered, "But you're going so long that those of us who do know a little bit are about to throw up." So it makes sense to know the limits, know your audience, and keep the boundaries of the Torah.
So we briefly meet Shimon HaTzadik, one of the last survivors of the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, the Great Assembly. His three pieces of advice are a hallmark of Jewish learning. And then we meet Antigonos Ish Socho, who we learn was a student of Shimon HaTzadik, and whose Greek name gives us a hint about the state of the Jewish world in the 2nd century BCE. Continuing on, we meet the Zugot, the pairs of rabbis. The pairs we will cover today are as follows: Yossi ben Yoezer of Tzereda and his partner Yossi ben Yochanan of Yerushalayim, and then Yehoshua ben Parachia and his partner Nittai the Arbalite, and lastly Yehuda ben Tabai and his partner Shimon ben Shattach. That will take us through about half of the first chapter of Pirkei Avot. The rabbis we meet in Pirkei Avot lived in a world of turbulence. The first temple had been destroyed. Many of the Jews had been dispersed to Babel and Persia. The prophets no longer spoke to the wayward Jewish people. So once we lost that prophetic vision and the status of an independent, self-governing nation, we were at the mercy of foreign nations that marched through Israel on the way to conquest of the whole known world. Jews had been enslaved, shipped off to foreign nations, and tortured for their belief in Hashem and the Torah. The Greek worldview dominated the Middle East, and the Jews were not immune to the Syrian Greco influences. The Great Assembly, the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, became the new interpreter and arbiter of Jewish law. This group of 120 sages included such greats as Ezra and Nehemiah, who both returned to Eretz Yisrael from Babel to help restore Jewish observance in the Holy Land. This group of Torah scholars guided the Jewish people spiritually for over 300 years, from about 349 BCE to 180 BCE. And during this period, the Second Temple was completed. Shimon HaTzadik was both high priest and political leader, which was unusual, and one of the last survivors of the Great Assembly. He rebuilt and fortified the walls of the city of Jerusalem, and he built a reservoir under the temple to bring fresh water into the area. This period of time, at the beginning of the Second Temple, found the city of Jerusalem in disrepair. Samaritans competed with mainstream Judaism, and the Jews were confused and in need of Torah leadership. Alexander the Great meant to destroy Jerusalem again. He was egged on by the Samaritans. Shimon HaTzadik took a chance by meeting with Alexander as he approached the city. A deal was struck between Shimon and Alexander. The city and the Second Temple would be spared, and in that year, all sons born to temple priests would be named Alexander. And so with this arrangement, the name Alexander became a Jewish name.
Second Mishnah, Mishnah Beis, Shimon HaTzadik haya mishyarei Knesset HaGedolah. Shimon HaTzadik was one of the last, in fact they say he probably was the last member of the men of the Great Assembly. Hu haya omer, he was known to say, Al shlosha devarim ha'olam omed. The world stands on three pillars, on three principles. Ala Torah, ala Avoda, v'al gemilas chasodim. Torah, of course we understand, it's the study of Torah and the keeping of the mitzvos. Ala Avoda, this could have a couple of different meanings. The obvious meaning is the temple service, the offerings of sacrifices, which we today substitute by saying prayer. Also, don't forget these rabbis were practical people. Avoda means what, Ari? It means work, right? So we're supposed to work. So the world stands on working people. And also al gemilas chasadim, and on the acts of loving kindness that we do one for the other.
What we refer to as the zugot, or pairs, of Jewish scholars were an alternative form of government that filled a void from about 180 BCE till 40 CE. Jewish secular authority no longer existed. In each pair that David will refer to, the first name listed served as the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, and the second name was the head of the rabbinical court. Hellenism was a tempting social, cultural, and religious force in Israel, especially among the wealthy Jews. In addition, Jewish religious splinter groups emerged in full force. The Jews spoke Greek, they adopted Greek practices. Antigonos and other Greek names had become quite acceptable among the Jews. Antigonos urged Jews to serve Hashem purely, without ulterior motive or a promise of a reward. Two of his misguided disciples, Zadok and Baisos, misinterpreted his teachings and denied the existence of the oral law and the concept of Olam Haba. They formed a splinter group known as the Sadducees or Tzedokim.
Next Mishnah, the third Mishnah. By the way, if somebody is speaking or coughing in the background, try to keep it down because everybody else is listening too. And
everybody mute.
Right, and I'm not so great at muting everybody. So let's just try it. This is kind of new for us as well. Hopefully we get it right. So third Mishnah, Antignos ish socho kibel mishimon hatzadik. And if you remember, in the first Mishnah we said that Moshe received two Torahs, not just the written law, also the oral law. And as Minel just said, there were disciples of Shimon HaTzadik who only wanted to accept the written law. And that created a big problem. So Hu Omer, he would say, Antigonus would say, Al tiyu kavodim hamishamshin esarav al manas lekabel pras. Do not be like those servants who serve their master in order to obtain a reward. Ela havu kavodim hamishamshin esarav shelo al manas lekabel pras. Be like the servants who serve the master, not looking for a reward, but out of love. V'yehei mora shamayim aleim, and the fear of God should be upon you. So there's a couple of questions here. First of all, how is it really possible that we're going to serve God in this way and never expect to benefit, not expect a reward? So one of the answers that they give is that the love of God should be that's its own reward. And also another one is that we expect our reward not necessarily in this world, but maybe in the world to come as well. The other issue is that we have two statements. One say that you should do the mitzvos out of love, and then right away it says the fear of heaven should be on you. So how is that contradiction resolved? So the answer is given that there are two types of mitzvos. We have the positive and the negative commandments. So the positive ones are the ones that are active, basically. We're going to accept these with the love of Hashem, but at the same time, we need to have a little bit of a fear. We have to know that Hashem is watching, so when it comes to the negative ones, the fear has to be there. So we're going to serve God out of love and also out of fear.
Back to the first of the pairs, the Zugot. Yossi ben Yoezer and Yossi ben Yochanan were disciples of Antigonos. During this period, when the two Yossis served, the Hashmonaim revolted against the foreign rulers of the day, the Hellenistic Seleucid Empire. Many Jews had already been banished or left voluntarily to diaspora communities in Babylon and in Egypt. The Hashmonaim revolt was ultimately a failure. Perhaps in an attempt to encourage Jews to return to Israel, the two Yossis sponsored a rabbinic ordinance requiring Jews who lived outside the land of Israel to be considered ritually impure.
Next Mishnah, getting to the two pairs. The fourth Mishnah, Yossi ben Yoezer ish Tzreida, Yossi ben Yochanan ish Yerushalayim kilu mehen. So the next ones to receive the tradition were Yossi ben Yoezer from Tzreida, and Yossi, the son of Yochanan, from Yerushalayim. Yossi ben Yoezer Omer, so Yossi ben Yoezer was known to say, Yehi beischa beis va'ad lachachamim. Your house should be a place where scholars gather. So hopefully we're fulfilling that today. We're all gathering today. We're in our own homes, but our houses should be places where scholars gather. Veve misabek ba'afar ragleihem. And you should sit in the dust of their feet. Vehevi shoseh b'tzamas devrehem. Sitting in the dust of their feet means that either it could be you should follow in their footsteps, or the way that classes were organized in their day was that the teacher would sit on a stool or a low bench, and the students would gather around and sit on the ground. Don't forget they had dirt floors, or they studied outdoors. So they actually were in the dust. And when you accept their teachings, you should accept them with a thirst. So you drink in their words with thirst. Yossi ben Yochanan ish Yerushalayim, the next Mishnah, fifth Mishnah 5. So Yossi, from the son of Yochanan from Yerushalayim, would say, Yehi beischa pasuach l'revacha. Your house should be wide open. V'yu aniyim b'nei beisecha. And the poor should be members of your household. Don't make them feel uncomfortable that you're taking care of them. They should be just like anybody that lives in your home. And do not speak too much with women. And we're going to get to that in a second. They say in your own wife, of course, and certainly not with someone else's wife. So there are many answers, many explanations for this one, some politically correct, some not so politically correct. But when I thought about it, I thought about, how about a situation like this? I'm in shul, and somebody makes a comment to me or says something that I'm not so crazy about, and then after davening I go home and I say to Mindel, look what so-and-so said to me. Isn't that a nasty thing he said? So of course, my wife, being my greatest defender, she's going to be upset. She's going to take offense to what this person said. So then what happens the next day? I go back to shul, my friend and I see each other, we smile at each other. We don't shake hands because we're not doing that these days, so we'll give a fist bump or maybe an elbow, whatever. But the matter is over between us. But how about for Mindel? It's not over for her, because once I told my wife that somebody said something not so nice to me, she's going to remember it, right? So by bringing that home, by having that discussion, I've created a bad situation. And then certainly, if we're talking about someone else's wife, so then they're getting into a totally different situation, different area where conversations can become banter, can be flirtatious, and we certainly want to avoid that. So, and then the Mishnah continues, Mikan amru chachamim, so the sages said, Kol zman she'adam marba sicha ma'isha. Whenever a person speaks too much with women, so it could be possibly the example that I gave in terms of bringing gossip home to my own family, or speaking to someone else, gorem ra la'atzmo ubotem medivrei Torah. So he causes a bad situation for himself. He removes himself basically from studying Torah. V'sofo yorish gehenim. And the end is going to be not such a good end for him.
Okay, Yehoshua ben Parachia and Nittai of Arbel. were disciples of the two Yassis. Yehoshua led the Sanhedrin and the Perushim, what we call the Pharisees in English. The Perushim, unlike the Tzaddikim, guarded the oral law and rabbinic decrees. Yehoshua was a modest person, but he had to step up and confront the Hashmonayan King Yanai, also known as King Alexander Janus. King Yanai was greatly influenced by the Tzaddukim, and he accused the Perushim of being disloyal to him. He killed many of the rabbis, and some, including Yehoshua ben Parachia, fled to Egypt. Nittai of Arbel saw how overwhelmed the Jews were by the political and cultural changes. Many Jews wanted to give up and surrender to the Hellenists and the Essenes. Nittai spoke to the Jews and urged them not to give up their Jewish faith or their hope.
Next Mishnah, Mishnah Vav, the sixth Mishnah. Yehoshua ben Prachya, v'Nittai ha'arbeli kiblu mehem. So the next pair was Yehoshua ben Prachya, Yehoshua the son of Prachya, and Nittai from Arbel. They accepted the tradition and they led the Jewish people from then on. Yehoshua ben Prachya Omer, so Yehoshua was known to say, Aseh lecha rav, u'kenei lecha chaver, v'vedon es kol ha'adam l'kaf. So the simple translation, make for yourself a rabbi, acquire for yourself a friend, and give everyone the benefit of the doubt. So when it comes to the rabbi, so that's an interesting one, and it says you should make for yourself a rav. In other words, don't depend that the rabbi is going to be, he's going to be the one who's going to be necessarily leading without some input from the people. So it's up to the members, it's up to the community to give the rabbi the respect, to build him up and make him into the leader. And then another interpretation is that you should have one main rabbi that is your main teacher. And they give an example. They say that somebody that learns one subject from one subject from another, many different subjects from many different people, it's like a farmer who has several different fields, and he has to go from field to field to field to take care of his crops. And basically, he doesn't have such a great yield out of any of them. But if he concentrates and spends time with one main teacher, so then it's as if he has one large field and he's got sections in it. And so it's easy for him to take care of his crop, and in the end, he has a much better yield. And in terms of acquiring a friend, so think about it. A friendship doesn't just happen from one direction. If I want to have a friend, I need to make an investment myself, don't I? So whether it's a financial investment, if your friend is in need and he needs help, so you've got to be there for him. And other types of ways, whether it could be emotional, it could be physical, whatever it is, if the friend needs help, you've got to make the investment, and that's how you acquire a friend. And then also, the last part is that you should always give a person the benefit of the doubt. And when it says, done as kol adam, you should judge the entire person. And that's kind of good advice, because sometimes somebody might say something, or you feel he's slighting you, or you make some mistake. But when you look at that person, you evaluate him in his totality, you can never be angry with him. And he's always going to be someone that you're going to judge favorably. Next one, the seventh one, Nittai har Beili Omer. So Nittai, what did he say? He said, Harchek mishachein ra, v'al tischaber l'rasha, v'al tisyoyish min aparonios. Distance yourself from a bad neighbor, right? Bad neighbors are bad problems. V'al tischaber l'rasha, and don't connect yourself to an evil person. V'al tisyoyish min aparonios means do not despair that punishment, the retribution is not coming. And there are a lot of different interpretations for this. So one of them could be that when you see a person who is a bad character, and yet he's flourishing, he's doing very well, he's making a lot of money, he's got a lot of respect, but you know that this person is not worthy, and so you're wondering, why is it that this person is getting this kind of respect? Or you see somebody that you don't really admire, and yet they offer you to come into business with them, and you say, well, he's doing so well, even though he's not such a great person, I'm going to join with him. So the Mishnah says, don't do that. Because in the end, this person is going to get what's coming to him, and you don't want to be associated with him when that happens.
The last of our pairs, Yehuda ben Tabai and Shimon ben Shattach. These two zugot were exiled to Alexandria by the Jewish king Yanai, who was a descendant of Yehuda HaMaccabee. Yanai appointed himself both king and high priest, and he followed the teaching of the Tzedukim. Eventually, Shimon ben Shattach returned to Jerusalem, and he reconciled to a degree with King Yanai. He was able to get King Yanai to agree that the Perushim were not a threat to his government. Now, Shimon ben Shattach became a leader in the secular government of his sister. His sister was Queen Shalom Tzion, or Salome. Shalom Tzion was Yanai's wife and an observant Jewish woman. For a time, King Yanai was busy with faraway military campaigns, and he largely ignored his wife's attempt to restore the Sanhedrin to its full glory. When King Yanai finally died at age 50, Shalom Tzion, the queen, became a pious ruler who removed the Tzedukim and the dishonest judges from the Sanhedrin and reinstalled her brother, Rabbi Shimon ben Shattach, and also Yehoshua ben Gamla as heads of the Sanhedrin. Shalom Tzion ruled for 9 years after Yanai died. The land of Israel and its Jewish inhabitants returned to a Torah true Jewish life. Jerusalem became a great spiritual center. All the children were educated in schools built by the Sanhedrin. The fields were full of bountiful crops. Shalom Tzion fortified the land and built an army to defend the Jewish people. Surrounding kings did not invade Israel during that period of time. The Jews were happy and free during this unusual period.
Next Mishnah, Mishnah Ches, number 8. Yehuda ben Tabai v'Shimon ben Shattach kiblu mehem. So the ones we just mentioned, Yehuda the son of Tabai and Shimon the son of Shattach received it from them. Yehuda ben Tabai Omer, so Yehuda ben Tabai was known to say, Al ta'as atzmachak orche hatayonim, don't make yourself like a lawyer, basically. V'chsheyu bali dinim omdin lefanecha, when the litigants are standing before you, don't favor one over the other. Don't try to give them a hint as what they should say to get the judgment in the right direction. Just listen impartially. And yeyu be'enecha kirishoim, they should both appear as evil to you, so that when you question them, you use skepticism, healthy skepticism. Make sure that you're asking the good questions so you can get all of the facts. And once the judgment is completed and they leave, so then you should view them both as they are innocent. Why is that? Because they accepted the judgment. So even today, when you have a situation where maybe Jews have a dispute and they're going to take it to a din Torah, not to take it to a secular court, God forbid, they take it to a din Torah, and once the judgment is finished, they accept it and they leave, and now the judge can look on them and say and consider them as both of them are innocent, because could be that the dispute was basically an innocent misunderstanding, and now they've been resolved and they're going to go away in peace. Shimon ben Shattach Omer, so the last mission we're covering today, number 9, Shimon ben Shattach would say, Have marbe lachakoras edim. Ask a lot of questions. When you interrogate witnesses, ask many questions, do a thorough investigation. V'vizor b'dvarecha, and be careful of what you say, because, when you ask a question, sometimes you can be giving the answer in a certain way. So when you ask the questions, ask them in a way that it's not going to influence them or make them think, what is he actually looking for, so they can know how to answer. Shema mitochem yilmedu l'shoker, because maybe from what you say, they're going to learn how to tell a lie, to give false testimony. So we hope that this has been useful and meaningful. Hope that you've enjoyed it. We'd like to see you back again next Sunday, and we promise we're going to get the technical part of it worked out somehow or other. I I was signing in and I didn't put a capital letter in my password where it's supposed to be uppercase, and I kept doing it over and over again. And the more times you do it, the more nervous you get. And that's kind of what took place here today. But next week we'll be back at 10 o'clock in the morning. Bring your own coffee. We can't supply that to you, but glad to see you and look forward to seeing you
We had a lot
again.
of fun doing this. A lot of fun.
Yes, sir, of course. Yes,
David,
sir. Thank you very much.
David, can I ask a question?
Sure. Somebody has a question? Who's the question?
Yeah, this is Manny Miller. I'm asking a question.
Hey, Manny.
I see you got this whole thing set up as basically as a lecture thing and zero interaction from anybody else. I understand that if you left it completely open, it would become a big balagan very quickly.
Right.
But is there a possibility that after both of you do your presentations, which were really excellent? I love the idea of having the historical part done by Mindy, and then you do the actual sayings.
Right.
But sometimes someone has something that they'd like to add or have a question, and maybe after you're done, a minute or two, give people a chance to ask something. I wonder if that, without it becoming again open-ended, you'd have to cut it off at a certain point because otherwise you never get through anything. So maybe the possibility of opening it up to a question or two after you've done your presentations. What do you think about that?
Okay, let's do it. So let's take about 10 minutes and let's see. And by the way, if you have a question and somebody else in the group has an answer, that's okay too.
Yeah, that's a good
So
idea.
go ahead, Manny.
It's not having questions.
It's your idea.
Sometimes if somebody has an insight or knows about something that wasn't mentioned, that might be helpful. Whatever the case may be.
That's great.
So,
Yeah, that's
Manny,
great. Cheryl?
I think the thing is, Manny, basically to maybe keep a note as they going through their presentation and rather draw questions at the end, and then everybody can discuss it. I think doing the presentation the way they did it was more effective that way because they covered the material.
Okay.
And then, I don't know.
Okay, good. So let's.
Up to you guys. It's up to you guys how you run it. I just threw out a suggestion, and you don't have to accept it.
No, I like it.
I'm very happy with the way it was right now too. So.
No, I like it a lot, Manny. And if anybody has something that they want to ask or add or discuss, that's great. So we could take, like you said, 10 or 15 minutes at the end, and I like Cheryl's idea too that you take notes and just save the question for the end, But anybody, so here we are. We're in the discussion period. If anybody has something to say.
Either way works for me. Either way works for me, whatever you want. It's great. Thank you very much. It was very, 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 very interesting. I love the historical aspect done by Mindy, and then you do the memoir. Very, very nice.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
I see Yafa, you unmuted yourself. So what do you have to say?
Yeah. Okay, first of all, Mom and Dad, it was a great job. Thank you so much. And I was curious where the historical information came from. Like the Queen. I never really heard about that before.
Right.
The street near Yerushalayim called after her, named after her, Yerushalayim. It's Tzin Amalka Street. It's very famous.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
She was like an anomaly, and it must have been she must have been such a special person because Yonai was her second husband. His brother was her first husband, and when he died, so she married his brother. She had no children. She was really an observant woman, and I don't know how she managed to get along in that crazy world that she lived in. It was a bad time, but I guess she was a really strong person, and she had a goal in mind. It's obvious. I mean, she really knew what she wanted, and that was to restore the country and especially the Yerushalayim to its former glory. So, the 9 years that she ruled after her husband Yanai died, her second husband, those were her glory years. The years prior to that, when she collaborated with her brother off and on, they weren't so great. Her husband was away. He was away marauding himself. The Jewish self-styled king was out there going around capturing other lands. So he ignored her. But eventually, he kind of caught up with what she was doing. And that's when he had a lot of the rabbis killed, banished. And only because he died at a young age was she able to resume the queenship and leads very, very successfully. And I guess it's not such an important time in our history, but some of the information I got from online, from like Chabad or other good sources, and then of course we have the sages of the Talmud, and in general you have comments about the Zugot, for instance, right here with you know, right here in all of the different sources. There's a lot of information. So some of them conflict a little, some give a lot more information. And when I really was interested in Shalom Tzion, I thought this is something unusual and special to me anyway as a woman. So I really, you know, made an effort to get a lot of information. I printed out a huge amount of information about her. So that's a long answer.
Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else before we sign off?
Cheryl again.
Hi, Cheryl.
Sorry. Just so you know that because of your background of the Kotzal and stuff, when you do put up the books and the things, you show us the sources. It's not always so easy to see it.
Okay.
Like, you know, you're holding up the book and stuff. It's not easy to see the name of the book. So maybe, I don't know if it's a way through the shul or some way to publish your resources. So that we can actually get the names of the resources or something. Or I don't know if there's an email that could go out from the shul.
Okay,
like
good.
Yeah,
Thank
of
you.
course.
That's really useful
Okay,
to
let
all
me
of
just
us.
say that.
Thank you.
Email sources.
Okay.
Okay.
And anybody else? No? All right, so thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
It's been fun for us,
Thank you.
and we hope to see you
Thank
again
you very much.
next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.